Greetings, one and all. Welcome back to another episode of the Icing on the Skate podcast. Hope I scared all of you in the chat. That was kind of the point. But yeah, so it's episode 12. Apologies for not being here last week. It was Chris's fault.
What?
It was absolutely his fault. He decided... He just said no. He was like, no, I don't want to do the podcast. No. In actual fact, I was in Zurich, as you probably know. And we were busy over the weekend before, so we couldn't get it done. We're here now. Hi. How's everyone today?
Hello.
Hi, Chris.
Hello.
Hi, Chris. So we also have a lovely guest here. He's been on the podcast a few times. I can't get rid of him just as much as I can't get rid of Chris, to be honest. Mr. Max Artis. Hi, Max. How you doing, bud?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
Nice to be here.
So, there's a lot of stuff that's happened in this last 2 weeks, and we're going to do our best to try and cram it into an hour and a half.
Yeah.
We're skipping over some of the smaller pieces of information. I've kind of tried to cram everything together as much as possible. Let's see how it goes. There's going to be less of a debate as such compared to usual episodes today, just because we want to get so much information in there. Hello everybody in the chat, by the way. Do keep talking to us. We will address the chat as we go along. We've got a nice crowd here tonight. Awesome. Welcome to the stream. So, let's begin by looking at the standings. We're going to skip past the individual scores over the last 2 weeks, because there's a lot of them. If, Chris, you wouldn't mind taking us through the standings of the Elite League.
Of course. So, top of the league, the Belfast Giants, 36 points from 23 games. In second place, the Nottingham Panthers.
Hey.
35 points, just a point back, but played 26. Cardiff in third, 22 games played, 33 points. Fife in fourth, 24 games played, 30 points. Guildford in fifth, 26 points from 22 games. Sheffield in sixth, 24 from 24. Glasgow in seventh, 21 from 21. Coventry in eighth, 21 points from 22 games. And then outside the playoff places, the Manchester Storm, 19 points from 23. The Dundee Stars, 19 points from 22. And bottom of the table, the Milton Keynes Lightning, 16 points from 23.
Something interesting to add is the sort of winning and losing streaks currently taking place. The Belfast Giants, they were on a 9-game winning streak, I believe, before their loss to Sheffield yesterday. We also have the Panthers on a 5-game winning streak. And there's a couple of teams on some pretty bad losing streaks in the league, actually. We've got the Coventry Blaze on a 6-game losing streak and the Manchester Storm on a 5-game losing streak. However, the penultimate position in the league standings, the Dundee Stars, on a 4-game winning streak. So they're trying to find some form. They might be able to jump up into, 9th place above Manchester, because they've got a game in hand on them, equal points. So The way it kind of looks at the moment is Belfast is the clear top. Cardiff is likely going to take over Nottingham for second once the games in hand are dealt with. So then that leaves, so in the sort of the ideal scenarios, if all the games have been played, it'd be Belfast first, Cardiff second, Nottingham third, Fife fourth, and Guildford 5, which is quite a great matchup. That's quite a nice group of teams, and you've got to give credit to some of the. Sheffield, for example, they're a 500 team now. If you told them at this point in the season they were going to be a 500 team, they would have laughed at me. And Manchester have taken a massive step back compared to last season, considering they did so well. Special guest Max, what do you think about the current standings in the Elite League?
I think it's kind of falling true for everyone, really, apart from Sheffield, who had a dog-awful start and are trying to pick themselves up out of a very big hole they've dug with the JCB. So,
yeah.
But they've obviously had to do what they've had to do. They've got rid of the personnel. They've refreshed everything. They've changed it around, and they're doing what they need to do. So, yeah. Apart from everybody else, it just shows you how interesting of a league we can be when people can go from like 6th to 4th to 2nd to all over the place. Like the amount of jumping between teams week on week because we pack our fixture so top. It's interesting to see how quickly you can rise and fall in this league.
Oh, definitely. And I think we're starting to see some teams heat up again and some teams cool off, which of course is what always happens in sports. Teams get hot, teams go cold. Nottingham have managed to pick it up again, like we said, with 5 straight wins. Fife have kind of cooled off a little bit. they can't. They're sitting in 4th place in the league at the moment, and they, in terms of games in hand and everything, they can't jump any higher. So that's quite interesting to see as well. Guildford are just carrying on doing their stuff. Glasgow are kind of. I'm still not quite sure what Glasgow's doing at the moment. I'm not sure they quite know what their identity is as a team yet. They're a 500 team exactly, or just over if you include the overtime loss. They're 10-1 in 21 games this season, so they're still trying to figure out stuff. Of course, a new coach there, new system, trying to figure out what's going on there. Coventry and Manchester, though, they've taken some steps back in these last few weeks, which, of course, they're not going to be very happy with. In terms of the following week, Chris, do you see this kind of being more of the same? We're starting to see what the final positions in the standings might look like, or do you think there's still plenty of room for manoeuvre?
In terms of what the fixtures coming up?
Yeah, just sort of in terms of the next week or so of hockey.
Yeah.
I guess the question's more up to Christmas. Up to Christmas and New Year. Do you see a lot of movement happening in the league?
It's difficult. We've got all the rest of the Challenge Cup quarterfinals interlaced with that.
Of course.
Because that's what disappeared for the last few weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the league standings. We've been going on about how competitive the league's been and how anybody can beat anybody, because Dundee were at that shootout against Cardiff, didn't they, and all the rest of it. But then you look at the league and you've got Arena team first, Arena team second, Arena team third. So it is, and with Sheffield climbing up there as well, it almost looks as though order is being, restored as per usual.
Yeah, but in a way, you could also say they are currently sitting down at 6th place as well. So
yes,
Arena team first, but they've played great since last season. Arena team second, they've kind of found a bit of new life in Nottingham. Cardiff, you always expect them to be good. If they're not playing well, it's surprising. Fife up there, which I think is very good. They had a pretty good last season, and they've managed to find the way to pick it up and continue that into this season, which is great. And then you've got Guildford, who are a second-year team in the league. Sure, the Arena teams are going to be at the top quite a lot of the time because they're the bigger budget teams and they have bigger spheres of influence. They have more contacts in places. Yeah. But to see the likes of Fife and Guildford up there in contention as well, I think, kind of like we've mentioned throughout the weeks, show you that in a way this still is kind of anybody's league. I mean, of course, Belfast and Cardiff are the two that are looking like they're going to compete for it. But all it takes is a losing streak.
I'm looking at Belfast. They've got a tough week.
Yeah.
They've got Dundee away on Wednesday.
Is that Challenge Cup or is that League?
No, this is all League.
Okay.
And whilst that Dundee haven't been brilliant, they have they've been on that winning streak, aren't they?
4-game winning streak in the league. They beat Cardiff, so.
Exactly. And then following on from that, they've then got Guildford away on Saturday.
Wow, okay.
Which is always difficult. And then they've got Cardiff at home on Sunday.
Oh.
So they've got Dundee, who are on a winning streak, Guildford, who it's never nice to face them because they're a difficult team to play, and then they've got Cardiff. So they've got this is going to be a defining week in my eyes for Belfast as to whether they are really going to maintain it throughout the season and go on to try and lift the trophy.
Yeah, which would be very interesting to see. Of course, it always gets more interesting the further into the season we get because the narratives and the stories change. So that's a look at the standings currently in the league. Just in case you were wondering, I've got the list of top scorers in the league. Just thought I'd throw them out there because it's been 2 weeks since we last talked about the league. John Dunbar of the Guildford Flames is sitting at the top. 34 points in 22 league games. How great is that? That's incredible.
Yeah.
Paul Crowder for Fife second with 33 points in 23 games. Cruz Reddick of the Guildford Flames, 33 points in 22 games. Blair Riley of Belfast has 31 points in 23 games. And to round off the top 5, Charles Linglet, or Lingley. Is it Lingley? I think it's Lingley, right? I don't know.
Whatever. Just go with it. Go with it.
Lingley, why not? 31 points in 22 games. So 2 of the top 5 scorers are Guildford Flames, which is quite cool. I should also add, you mentioned the Belfast-Dundee game. That is actually being televised on Free Sports. So it's on Wednesday at 7:30. I will definitely be tuning in to watch that. I mean, like we said, a team on a winning streak against the top team in the league at the moment, so that's going to be a great clash. They really have gotten quite lucky with the clashes that they've picked, I think, on Free Sports. Like, they've got some really interesting narrative games going on there when they've chosen them. So, let's move on to the news in the league these last 2 weeks. And
I'll just give a quick shout out to Guildford, who you may well have seen last night, came from 4-0 down midway in the second period to beat Coventry in overtime away. That was
incredible.
That's quite a comeback.
Which is quite reflective of the game between the Washington Capitals and the Anaheim Ducks as well, where it was
4 power play goals for Guildford, so Coventry need to stay out the box.
That is rough. So, in terms of the news, the Nottingham Panthers have been very, very busy in terms of sorting out their roster for this season. Obviously, they're wanting to bring in some new guys to replace some of the guys that are either leaving for other reasons or not necessarily producing. So, we've got a few players entering, a few players leaving. So, we will start with the players entering. These are spread out over the last 2 weeks. So, 23-year-old American goaltender Patrick Munson joined the Nottingham Panthers about a week or so ago. He had his first start last night in their win against the Glasgow Clan. He has previously played in the NCAA, which is the college league in America. He played with Michigan Tech and has also played with Vermont and Denver. So they've got themselves a new goaltender, which we'll talk about the other backup goaltender on the Panthers roster in a moment. They also brought in Dylan Richard, 25-year-old Canadian forward Dylan Richard. He had also played 4 years in the NCAA with Penn State University, and he joined the Norwegian team Mangalud, where he put up 38 points in 43 games. He then moved to HK Nitra in Slovakia, where he scored 10 points in 24 games, but he's now joined the Panthers. And his first game with the Panthers, he recorded 3 assists, so he's got himself off to a good start, over a point per game in his first weekend here. It has also been announced, though, that Tyler Van Cleef has been released by the Panthers due to the addition of Dylan Richard. And that's also because Van Cleef was on a 1-month contract, so he wasn't signed full term. So those are the players that have entered. However, the players that are leaving, well, one's kind of leaving, one's definitely left. Sam Gospel, the backup goaltender for the Nottingham Panthers, he hasn't left the organisation. He's just been sent back down to the Telford Tigers of the EIHL, essentially to get more ice time, is why. He's not really getting enough ice time, and the problem is he's been a bit streaky when he's played in the Elite League at the moment. There's some nights where he's really on his game, and there's some nights where you would just want somebody else in the net for you. So I think Rick Chernomaz is sending him back down to Telford just to get him some more playing time, hopefully help him iron out the creases and be ready potentially next season if he's needed. And lastly, with the Panthers, I just want to run through all these quickly. It was announced earlier today, actually, only a couple of hours ago or so. I remember I sent this to Chris like at, lunchtime or something?
Oh, something like that, yeah. I think it's just after lunch.
Yeah, so Tyler Biggs of the Nottingham Panthers has decided to leave the organisation. He had a surprise meeting with Rick Chernomaz. He is flying back to Kalamazoo, and he's played his last game for the Panthers. Apparently, the Panthers understand that he's going to go and finish the current season back with his old club in the ECHL, but he's thinking about maybe moving outside of the sport and starting up a career outside of hockey. He had 9 points with the Panthers since the start of the season, including a goal and an assist in his last game, which was against Glasgow yesterday. So, of course, we wish the players good luck, all of them that are leaving. We wish the players luck that are joining the team. Max, as you are probably the most knowledgeable person about the Panthers here, I think it's fair to say. What do you think about these moves? Is there one that sticks out to you the most? Is there one that you think shouldn't have been done? Talk to us.
It's a shame that Tyler Biggs is just kind of like, it was kind of like out of the blue, drop, leave, see in a bit, I'm going to go play somewhere else and think about if I really want to keep playing.
Yeah.
Which, okay, you don't really want that. You don't really want that mentality kind of like in the changing room, I suppose. You kind of want positivity and you want to, but
especially with the last few games that they've played, and they put up 15 goals this last weekend, so things are starting to go well for them.
I was just looking at it. Before the game against Glasgow Clan, we had 10 different scorers and 18 goals in 4 games.
Wow.
And I know that's definitely increased over the last game. So I think Biggs even got on the score sheet. So he's just it was a bit of a strange one. We knew Van Cleef was only around for a period of time. I would have liked to have seen his contract extended, but I believe it was a rolling monthly contract to kind of just see through injuries.
Yeah.
I hope that the other players coming in, like Turden and who's the guy that we signed?
Dylan Richard.
Dylan Richard. I'm hoping they're more long term than they are similar deals to.
I think they're
Van
intended
Cleef.
to be long term. I think the only one that I've heard that was a 1 month contract or a monthly contract was Van Cleef, actually. And it's interesting that you bring him up because with Tyler Biggs leaving, that of course begs the question: is there a space for Van Cleef on the roster now? So do they go and talk to him again, maybe?
Yeah, it depends on his scenario. Like if we got him on a month's loan, depends on where we've loaned him from. If they want him back, if that team's got issues, if he actually is with the team, or whether it was just a kind of like a we found this guy, he'll do a job for us kind of thing. And we'll just see how it works out. Then saying that, there's a lot of chat around the Facebook forums and stuff. Is he actually producing anything? I don't think Van Cleef. I don't think he really gelled with any of the other players. He kind of was on a line with some other guys and like kind of floated around a bit.
I think especially with the fact that they scored so many goals this weekend, it does also beg the question, like, if we did bring him back, would he help or would he not necessarily cause a problem or cause a hindrance? But if you've scored 15 goals in the last 2 games, do you need a player like Van Cleef to kind of potentially break up what seems to be working right now? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think I also saw, I don't know the accuracy of this, it was one person's comment on the whole Tyler Biggs leaving on when it was posted on Twitter. I'm not sure, but because we've had so many injuries and had to bring so many players in, some people believe that we might be a few players over the import limit anyway. So guys like Biggs leaving frees up another space, but we might still be a few players over. Of course, I don't think that's why he left, to free up the import list, because we've still got some players out for a long period of time. It's just, if that is the case, then it makes sense why Van Cleef has gone after his month contract, especially if the players are playing well and we've already got too many players on the roster. I guess that then begs the question, well, if we're still like 3 imports over the limit, who else do we get rid of, you know?
Yeah, and we've still got John Rowe out injured. We've still got, I think, Tommy Hughes only recently just come back. Henderson's still out.
Yeah, Hughes came back this weekend.
Yes, I think he got back on the score sheet as well. But when you go out and score 7 to 8 goals in a game, you expect, potentially 6 to 7 players scoring them goals. The one person I really feel sorry for is Sam Gospel. I think he's proven himself to be a competent goalie.
Don't even get me started on this.
Do you want to get started, Chris? Go for it.
And him going down to Telford is just a bit of a sore deal, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I can understand them wanting to give him more ice time.
Of course.
But other players that they've given more ice time, they've shipped off to like Dundee. They've done that with Kelsall, haven't they? My problem with him going to Telford is that I can't see him getting more ice time in Telford. The reason being is that, okay, Telford lost last night, but before that they were on a 10-game winning streak.
Okay.
The one they lost last night was in a shootout. They've only been conceding 1s and 2s. Their netminder Tom Hovell, who was at the Lions last season, is regularly in the 95% save percentage.
Wow.
And a very good goalie.
And a very good goalie. He's not needed in Telford.
Yeah,
so he's
He's
not going to get the ice time anyway.
Yeah,
this is what I don't understand.
Because I mean, for a coach, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, you've been on a 10-game winning streak. There's no need to bring in a guy like Gospel. I guess. Yeah. Like what you mentioned. Because the problem with Sam Gospel is he's kind of in that middle zone. Like, there are definitely games where he shows he's an elite league capable goaltender, but there's also games where he doesn't necessarily do so. Of course, that is also a reflection of the team that's played in front of him, and there have been several games where Gospel has been in the net, where the team in front of him hasn't played very well at all. But I guess it's because they could send him to another Elite League team. But then you have the problem of he might steal a load of wins for them against.
Yeah. And then it comes against the Panthers.
Exactly, especially against you, and when it gets later in the season and you need those 2 points. But on the flip side, it would help with his development and getting his ice time and being able to kind of round out his game as an Elite League goaltender. But then on the flip side, you have, of course, send him to the NIHL, to a team where he's not necessarily needed at the moment. He can get more ice time if they want to give him some, because, like you said, they've got a very top-notch goaltender in Telford already. But then it doesn't bite the Panthers in the arse because he's in the same league. You know, it's a really tough thing. I guess it's very different from having a forward or a defenseman because the goaltender is such an important player. Like, he's probably the most important singular player on the ice at one time. Like, you have 12 forwards, you have 6 defensemen, you only have 1 goaltender. So and my concern is that, like I said, I don't think he's going to get the ice time in Telford. Now, from what seems to me to be a logical point of view, and this is all I'll say on it, because otherwise I'll get into a rant. We ain't got the time for that today, mate.
Exactly. But, okay, at the Lions at the moment, right, our 2 netminders, one is 16.
Okay.
And one, yes, he's 23, but he played roller hockey and only transferred to the ice 7 weeks ago. And they're facing like 60, 70 shots a night.
Yeah.
They're facing 60, 70 shots a night, and the Panthers go, oh, we don't need this goaltender anymore. We gave him to you last season, but we'll ship him off to somewhere he's not needed. That's all right.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And it just doesn't seem logical to me.
The problem is, we need... Gospel, he either needs to show that he can be a consistent Elite League goalie, or he needs to show that he will be a consistent NIHL goalie. Like, he's really stuck in that purgatory at the moment where there's always going to be a negative to whatever you choose to do with him. That's a real shame because, like we said, he has shown flashes of some really good play for the Panthers, but it's not always there, and that's the problem. So
I've got no problem with going back down to the NIHL. Just don't send him to a team like Telford who don't need him.
To a team that doesn't necessarily need him at this moment in time. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Right, so let's move on to Mr. Eric Neely. Okay, this one was mentioned a couple of weeks ago. It was November 21st. It's been a little while since this one, but I think it's an important one to bring up. So, Milton Keynes Lightning forward Eric Neely, of course, played with the Sheffield Steelers last season. For one reason or another, I'm not quite sure whether it was his decision or the organisation's decision. Both parties parted ways, and Eric Neely signed with the Milton Keynes Lightning, where he had 9 goals and 17 points before this big news was announced that he's now gone back to the Sheffield Steelers, which I must admit has really, really annoyed, or really, really annoyed at the time, Milton Keynes Lightning fans. And I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised at all.
I'm not surprised at all. So Neely had a successful spell. Yeah, so he decided to retire at the end of last season and then decided to come out of retirement to play for Milton Keynes and played pretty well for Milton Keynes. That's a real punch in the face. Like,
it is.
I mean, Milton Keynes, okay, granted, they're not the strongest team in the Elite League at this moment in time, but losing a guy like Neely damages them even more so. Like, he's been one of their top players in the league. Why don't they do a trade? Like, I don't understand. Of course, it's a smaller league and there's different assets and different amounts of money being handled compared to some of the other bigger leagues in this country. But just do a trade. It's fair for both sides. If Sheffield and Neely both say, we want him to be here, then if Milton Keynes have the opportunity to go, okay, well, you have to give us something back. Because they've been left without one of their top point scorers. I mean, in the last little while, it hasn't affected them a huge amount. But then again, they're back down at the bottom of the league standings. So, and of course, they've had all the head coach stuff going on. They've got Tim Wallace and Ryan Lannon, I believe, as their head coaches for the rest of the season. Like, they've got enough problems on their plate without their top scorer or one of their top scorers leaving to the team that he played for last season. They should at least get something in return, you know?
Yeah, they should. Yeah. I think this still shows... the league is competitive this year. We've said this week in, week out. It's great. But I think this just shows the power that the big teams still have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's so much of you're playing well and we want you, come to us. Yeah, all right then.
Yeah,
and
it's like
there's no
Dundee and Milton Keynes. They're not minor league affiliate teams. They're part of the
No.
league. If you want that asset, and like for example, it's different. Say if Shudra goes to Milton Keynes and then goes back to Sheffield because he's contracted with Sheffield, whereas Neely wasn't. Neely wasn't contracted with Sheffield. He had a contract with the Milton Keynes Lightning, and they basically went rip. Okay, bye. Like I really do sympathise with MK fans. Like, on this issue. Like, I get that Sheffield, of course, they want to be the best team possible. Every team wants to be the best team possible. That's kind of the point of sports. You don't play to come fourth place.
Yeah.
You play to hit as high as you possibly can. Or achieve as much as you possibly can, regardless of your budget and the players that you've got available. But you can't snipe players from other people's teams unless they get something in return. I really think that the Elite League should bring in some sort of trade system for something like that. If you're going to take a player from another team, that's fine as long as you give them something in compensation. That's like the New York Rangers going, oh, we want Connor McDavid because he's really good and he probably wants to come play here because it's a really big market and he can make a load of money on sponsorships in New York. Okay.
So we're just going to have him.
Yeah, Connor McDavid, do you want to come here? Yeah, all right. Right, perfect. Bye, Edmonton. Like, Edmonton are screwed enough as it is without Connor McDavid. Could you imagine taking him away from that roster? Like, they'd be getting another first overall pick that they'd ruin. Like, for goodness sake, it's ridiculous.
I love how my rant wasn't quite as
yeah, but you know,
emotionally
like,
powered
I think
as yours.
I'm making a fair point, right?
Mm.
Like, I don't mind ranting as long as it's relevant, you know?
Was
Quite a lot of the time I go off task, but I feel that one was all right.
Has there been some kind of monetary value behind the scenes that's not been mentioned, or is he literally just upsticked?
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think they've gone. So we've had a chat with Eric Neely, and he says that he wants to come play back for Sheffield, or we've offered him a contract and he's interested in playing. Sorry. Bearing in mind
if Milton Keynes next got
Sheffield
Sheffield, because that'll be interesting.
Bearing in mind that the Sheffield owner is also the general manager of the league, so like you could also argue like he can essentially do what he wants in that regard.
Oh,
I mean,
let's not get into that.
They would never say out in the open that would happen. Like I'm not saying that he has had anything to do with it. That's purely speculation. What I'm saying, but like, come on, like I highly doubt that he hasn't had something to do with that. Even if he's just gone, Neely, do you want to come back to Sheffield? And then he's gone, yeah, all right. Even if it's that, you know.
So yeah, there's a few points in there that I'm definitely going to pick up on. Like, first off, I'm going to defend. What is it, Tony? Is it Tony Hand?
Yeah, Tony Hand's the.
It's Barrasso, isn't it?
No. I mean who sits in as the commissioner as the league?
Tony Smith.
Smith. Yeah, sorry, Tony Smith.
I feel like I should know that better than I actually did.
Yeah, I know. So they are adamant that he is just like the nominated person at board meetings to have the final say on things. He is not officially, but he is unofficially the last person that gets the casting vote. So he's just an owner. He's not, but he has the league's best interest at heart and that sort of thing. So between the owners, as far as I'm aware, they've come out and said he's not the commissioner of the league or the head of the league or this and the other. He is the person at board meetings that gets the casting vote. Therefore, he is the chair. Yeah,
I believe his official title is league chairman. I think is what the official name is.
And they have to have somebody to fulfill that role, and he has just done it for very long. Unfortunately, he is an owner of the league, which some people find is a bit biased. As per the player changing and chopping and this, that, and the other, it really does show that the league is just a money league.
Yep.
Like they just turn around and say, right, well, you're getting paid. Let's say, don't hold me to this. I don't know if this is how it goes down, but let's say, you know, Sheffield say, oh, we'll offer you an extra 200, 300, 400, have X amount more per week to come and play back in Sheffield.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, okay, fair enough. That's a good idea.
Because he's basically doing the same job, just getting paid more for it.
Exactly. In a place where he knows, in a city that he knows, in a fan base that he knows, where he'll be loved and welcome back.
Exactly. The fans were really excited for this news. So,
but the problem that shows is that Elite League contracts, and I've got two examples of this as well from the Panthers side of things, that as much use as I haven't got a spare blank piece of paper next to me. Otherwise, I'd wave that about and say that's an elite league contract, because that's about as much use as it's worth, to be honest with you. Because the Panthers, so when Cam Johnson played for the Panthers, back when I think it was Evan Mosley's first year at the awards night, they both agreed to signing on an extra 2-year contract extension. But come the start of the year, Cam Johnson said, "No, I've got a radio gig that I'm going to go do in my hometown in St. Louis. Bye-bye. Thanks for having me." And Evan Mosley goes, "I've been scouted by the AHL, and I'll see you later. Goodbye." So,
but it's a contract. You've got to stick to it. If you sign the contract, you've got to stick to it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, don't sign the bloody contract.
Exactly. It's silly. It really is. It's backwards, and it's medieval, and it's all sorts. Like, at any point, it believe that the player or the team can just drop out of whatever they've signed up and agreed, and chop and change as they see fit to themselves. Which you can see that it's now the league that makes it a business rather than an actual entertainment product.
The thing with contracts, though, is that's just the same as in any job. You give your month's notice, and you can get out at any time.
Yeah, but that's a month's notice. You know.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not saying for sure that they didn't give that to the club. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
That
just because it wasn't publicised.
But yeah, they need to tell us that.
Yeah, exactly. That's where the league needs to be a lot more open and fluid, and we need to know the things that go on. If you look at I'll speaking about this exact thing with my dad this morning on the drive home from work. That there needs to be a lot more openness about the league and what happens and who gets. I'm not saying you have to say who gets paid what and this, but who's tied into deals and who's actually.
I'm actually going to go one step further with that. No, I think we should know how much their contracts are worth. Like, I mean, it's not a necessary thing in this league, but I basically any other league, you know how much they're earning that season. Which, I mean, like, for example, I don't know how much any of the players on the Panthers roster are earning. I don't know how much any of the players on any roster in the Elite League are earning. No. Like, I mean, that would show you the disparity between teams. If, for example, they said Eric Neely was earning this much money playing for Milton Keynes, he's now gone to a contract with this much money in Sheffield, you'd be like, oh, okay, now we see why he's done it, because he's earning more money there. Like, we see more of the motivations behind it, you know?
Or he gets a better deal out of the contract, he gets this, that, and the other extra, or
exactly, like a signing bonus or a 10-goal bonus or something like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't think it should say, oh, we've signed this player. They never say how long it's for, unless it's like we've only signed him for a month. I think that I mean, you can say most other jobs don't do this, which I mean that's a fair point. But I think especially as the league is growing, we should know how much players are earning money. Like I think especially if we're talking like big numbers, we should know. Because then, for example, if a player does decide to up and leave, then you're like, well, hang on a minute, it's because you're not getting paid enough. But then again, the league doesn't want to show that kind of stuff, I think. Anyway, as much as I'd love to carry on talking about this, I think we should move on.
Yes, please.
So Eric Neely has moved to Milton Keynes. I don't have the exact stats of how well he's done since he's returned. I assume he's done relatively all right. It's Eric Neely. So there were two other signings in the Elite League. Well, two other signings. One from the Manchester Storm and another one for the Milton Keynes Lightning. So Milton Keynes have been active again. So the Manchester Storm, and this was released on November 28th, so it's been about a week or so, signed Canadian forward Chance Braid for the remainder of the season. The 24-year-old has come to Manchester from the Czech Republic's second tier. And at the same time, Dylan Anderson of the Manchester Storm has left the team. Finnerty, head coach of the Storm, Ryan Finnerty, says, we've known about the possibility of Chance becoming free for a few weeks now, and they're really happy to have him. And meanwhile, with Milton Keynes, of course, they lost Eric Neely. They decided to bring in Ivan Sijan from Medvesac Zagreb of Austria's EBEL. He's a 28-year-old Croatian defenseman, and he has spent time in Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. He played 9 league games for Zagreb this season in the EBEL, as well as 3 in the Continental Cup, of course, against the Belfast Giants. Tim Wallace is quite happy to have him by the sounds of it. I mean, whenever we get these kind of guys, they're quite happy to have him. Either of you want to add anything on these guys? I believe Sparky Eagle has mentioned in the chat that Chance Braid got a goal in his debut, so he's already finding a way to put points on the board. I believe Sejan, his first game with the Lightning was against the Panthers. I think it was their midweek game Wednesday, I want to say. Anything you guys want to add on those two?
I think these are... Go on, Max, you go first.
Oh, sorry. I was going to on what Sparky's just put in. So it says Chance Braid also knows Springer and Siddell, so he looks like he's going to fit into that team very nicely. And he's going to have an easy transition getting into that. Yeah.
I think that both these teams is at that stage of the season. I mean, where are we now? We're 20? We're just over a third of the way through. Yeah, just over a third of the way through. Even Milton Keynes, who are bottom, are only 3 wins away from the playoffs. And Manchester are only a game away from the playoffs.
Yeah.
Neither of these sides needs to panic.
Yeah.
But making the odd change here and there, as they are doing, and just, it's not like you need a complete squad overhaul, but they just need those few changes that can just change the way that the team are playing slightly, get those, grind out those few wins. So I think the changes that perhaps needed to happen, and we'll see over the next kind of month or so up to New Year, how those new guys kind of gel with the team and if they can make an impact on the score sheet.
Yeah, I definitely think it's an example of two teams that are kind of trimming the fat. The players that haven't necessarily gelled well, they're not the players that they expected, or they're just not doing as well as they anticipated and have decided, okay, we're going to move on. Like, for example, Dylan Anderson leaving the Storm, and they bring in Chance Braid to replace him. I kind of call it the Guildford method. I assume that Elite League has been doing this for years now, but Guildford last year they were a perfect example of this. Getting rid of players that weren't producing how they should be, bringing in players that were able to replace them. So I think it makes sense. Like you said, they don't need to hit the panic button. Sure, a league title is probably way out of the cards for these two teams, but a playoff berth is not, like you said, because we're talking about inches. We're talking about 1 or 2 points here most of the time. So
it's the thing with the Elite League, because there's no kind of hype and huge deal made out of like a trade deadline like there is in the NHL or transfer deadline in football. These could just kind of happen. Like, it's, for instance, in football you've got the summer window and then a window in January, and you can't sign players outside of that. So it's all kind of, they just kind of coming in trickles. There's no kind of big overhaul midway through the season.
No.
So it can almost be difficult to gauge what much of a difference one player has made, because there isn't that definitive before and answer where like 5 players have changed in the space of a week.
Nottingham. So let's move on. So they're all the players that have joined and left the league these last few weeks. We now move on to a lovely bit of information in terms of international hockey returning once again to the Elite League. So the Belfast Giants, you might remember we mentioned a few weeks ago, they hosted the semi-finals of the Continental Cup. They hosted the semi-finals and they played the likes of Zagreb, where Sejan's from. They played a few other teams. I can't remember them off the top of my head, and I'm not going to try. But it turns out that each of the teams that made it through got a chance to bid to host the final of the Continental Cup, which takes place between the 11th and 13th of January 2019. And Belfast were successful in their bid. So SSE Arena in Belfast will be hosting the Continental Cup. It's the 17-team tournament's final 4 includes Kazakh champions Arlan Koksetstal. That was an awful pronunciation. Polish runners-up GKS Katowice and HK Gomel from Belarus. Then you've got the Belfast Giants. So it will run between the 11th to the 13th of January. I believe they're doing a webcast deal, like 40 quid to watch all of the of that.
Belfast have got the evening game on each of the 3 days as well,
which makes sense. I could think that, of course, the home ice advantage. You want the home fans to be able to turn up and fill the arena, so that makes complete sense. So We will definitely keep an eye out on the Continental Cup. Of course, last season Sheffield, they were part of the Continental Cup. Unfortunately, they made it to the final weekend, didn't they? Or did they only make it to the semis?
Semi-finals.
Semis, yeah.
I thought it was only the semi-finals. And of course, the year before, was it the year before Nottingham won it?
Yeah, the year before Nottingham won it. Nottingham won it in 2016, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So, I mean, we'll of course update you once that actually happens, or during the event, whenever the podcast fits in that time frame. Good luck to the Belfast Giants. I mean, they're a pretty hot team at the moment. All they've got to keep doing is finding that chemistry, keep getting wins.
I think they can win it.
I think they're well within a chance. Definitely.
But I think that's good for British hockey as well, because we've had teams go deep into the tournament in 3 years in a row.
And also because Sheffield, Nottingham tried to host the final, didn't they? And then they got denied it. But this time Belfast has been given the chance to host it. So, like you said, it's another step in the right direction as well. Yeah. So, and then we've got one more piece of news regarding British hockey, which I find very interesting. So it was announced on November 30th, so a couple of days ago, that Team Great Britain, you know, the team that managed to clinch that gold medal last year, which was fucking incredible.
Farmer!
Yes. Oh, I love that. Every time I watch that, it just puts a massive smile on my face.
Yeah. So, have you seen it with the Titanic music behind it?
I have.
Yeah.
It's so funny. So, the World Championship, where Team GB are going to be facing off against the likes of Canada and Russia and all of America and all those tough teams up there. They, for the first time since 1994, I might add, they've got a few sort of preparation games, international challenge matches is what Ice Hockey UK have called them. So before they go over to Slovakia, they have a few games in April. They have games against Hungary and Italy, their two national teams. And then also it's announced that 2 KHL sides will be visiting Great Britain to come and play against Team GB, including Torpedo, Nizhny Novgorod, and Dynamo Riga. Dynamo Riga, apparently they call it Dynamo, so Dynamo Riga. So 2 KHL teams, 2 pretty decent KHL teams, I might add, are coming over to play. Britain will play Riga at Coventry Sky Dome on the 6th of February 2019, and I think Great Britain are playing Torpedo in Sheffield and Nottingham. Which is pretty cool. Wait, here we go. Here we go. So, Torpedo, the KHL team, are playing Team GB at the Motorpoint Arena Nottingham on the 27th of April, and the Fly DSA Arena Sheffield on the 28th of April. So
you've got to get yourself up for that.
I am absolutely going to watch one of those games.
You've got to get yourself up here for that.
I really want to. If I could go and see both, that would be great. But it was also announced that so the February game is like really early on compared to the rest of them. Then you've got Great Britain versus Italy at the Sky Dome, and Italy versus Hungary at the Sky Dome as well. And then Great Britain versus Hungary. So, interestingly, 21st of April, Great Britain versus Hungary at Planet Ice Milton Keynes. Interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
So, Max, what do you think about all this? The chance for the KHL to be brought to GB for us to have some warm-up games before Slovakia?
I think it's wicked. I'm definitely going to get myself to the Riga game. I'm definitely going to get myself to the Motorpoint Arena game because I'm in Nottingham, so it makes sense. Makes life easy.
Do it.
Not too sure if I could make the Sheffield one, but I think my bank account's going to be screaming out for some tickets to be bought.
My bank account's just screaming at the moment. It's just screaming in general. So
yeah, I'm when it got announced, I was really looking forward to it because unfortunately I was trying my hardest to save and think about actually going out to the World Championships. As much as I would be there supporting Team GB, it's a chance to see Canada, Sweden, Finland,
of course, America.
Like these are the team, these are the players and the stuff you dream about. Well, you watch them on NHL Network and all this sort of stuff, and you got a chance to go and potentially watch them and get stuff signed by them. So
yeah, exactly.
It's wicked. I really like Riga. I think they're a wicked team. I think they're a wicked outfit.
Yeah.
But is this now the gateway of opening up to potentially a London KHL team?
Which has been rumoured for a number of years now. So
as long as I can remember, yeah, they've been.
I'd love it.
They've been wanting it. So if they can come over and GB give them a good show and all this sort of stuff, and like their fans be welcomed in this, and hopefully there's not much trouble.
Yeah, I mean, granted, the game that I went to with St. Petersburg and Riga, because Riga are from Latvia, all of the fans were great. I didn't see one problem with any of the fans there, which was brilliant. Like, I mean, people were cheering for Riga, people were cheering for St. Petersburg. There was no, because St. Petersburg won, obviously, and Riga was playing as the home team. There was no sense of, we're really pissed off with the St. Petersburg players because they won and anything like that. It was a really nice atmosphere, actually, and I would expect that to be the case here as well. So, yeah, I think it's awesome. I definitely want to get down to at least one or two of the games against Torpedo. I think that'd be great, because I haven't seen Torpedo play live yet, which would be great. But yeah, so that's all the news from this side of the pond. Let's move over to the other side of the pond, shall we, folks? There's a lot of NHL news that's happened these last 2 weeks, as you may expect. I've kind of picked some of the more interesting ones. Some of the more ones, some of them have been talked about quite a lot, but the more interesting, more humorous ones, because I've got Nylander on the list, but we're not going to sit there and talk about it for half an hour.
There's no need. He signed, deal with it, done. There we go. That's that bit covered, isn't it?
Great hockey player. Glad he's remaining in Toronto. But if I never hear his name for the rest of my life, I could probably die a happy man. You know.
I've almost heard his name as much as I've heard the word Brexit recently.
Yeah, that's literally what my life has been these last few months. Brexit and William Nylander. Okay, Max will be back in a moment. He's just had some technical difficulties. So
maybe Nylander can sort out Brexit.
Yeah.
That'll.
Yes, hire Nylander as Brexit secretary. I love it.
He's good at leaving everything to the last minute. Right.
Oh, that's brilliant. So, in hockey news, on November 26th, 2018, it was announced that Ron Hextall had been fired as the general manager of the Philadelphia Flyers. Of course, Hextall being a long-time player of the Philadelphia Flyers back in his playing career, was it? No, I was about to say he was the one that scored the first ever goalie goal, but I don't think that was him. Okay, so let me just add Max back in. See if he's back in. Bear with. Oh, where's Chris gone? Oh. Max, you're messing it all up, bud.
Oh dear. Right, I'll hang up on here.
No, don't worry. No. I'm adding Chris back. Oh, God. You see, you turn up late to the podcast. Your bloody iPad runs out. Oh, I'm just disappointed in you, Max, today.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll bring you along on my job, and we can start at 3 o'clock in the morning and see how you feel afterwards.
Yeah. So, how has that actually affected the thing? Okay, so we've got like half of you on one bit and half of you on the other. So I'll tell Chris to join this one. Hopefully he does.
Right. I've got a different my other account on the phone compared. I'm using my mobile phone now.
Okay. So Ron Hextall being fired, you're Max. Max, Ron Hextall being fired. What do you think?
I'll be honest, I haven't read a lot into it. I've listened to a couple of the NHL podcasts that I listen to when I'm in the van driving. Their thoughts were that they've got the wrong guy.
Yeah, I agree. Hi, Chris. Welcome back.
I'm back. Oh, it all went really weird.
Sorry, I'm just having to swap you around because otherwise it says that Max is Chris and Chris is the guest. Right. I think we're back. Right. Anyway, Ron Hextall. Yeah, I agree. Dave Hextall hasn't been a very good coach for the Philadelphia Flyers. In fairness, that's kind of Ron Hextall's job to go, maybe this isn't the guy we necessarily keep on long term. So just to give you a bit of context, this is as of the 26th of November. So, of course, they've played games beyond that. But the Flyers at the time of the firing were 10 wins, 11 losses, and 2 overtime or shootout losses. They were 7th place in the Metro Division. They were 1-4-1 in their past 6 games, following a 6-0 loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs on that Saturday. They're allowing 3.57 goals per game, which is 3rd most in the NHL after Ottawa and Florida. Ottawa are allowing 4 goals a game. Jesus. Their penalty kill was ranked 30th out of 31, and their power play was 25th. So, yeah, not very good at all. He was in his 5th season as general manager, and he was promoted from assistant GM in 2014. They reached the Stanley Cup playoffs twice, but were eliminated in the first round each time against the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Washington Capitals. So, yeah. Chris, what do you think?
Well, they've not really had a good start, have they?
No.
I think if you look at the 5 years as a whole, only making the playoffs twice for a team of that caliber, I mean they're not, they're not a New York or a Toronto in terms of one of the first teams you would necessarily think of, but they're still what I would consider one of the bigger, if that's the right word, teams in the league.
Yeah, well, they're one of the expansion teams. From the 67 expansion. They've been in the league for about 50 years now.
Yeah, you'd certainly think of them ahead of teams such as, I don't know, Carolina or so they're a team that kind of you would need to see in and around the playoffs. And they weren't there, and even when they were there, they didn't have a deep run.
Yeah.
So
I should also add that during the time that Ron Hextall was the general manager, in terms of we've heard about the playoff success. In terms of his drafting, he drafted 6. The Flyers started the season with 6 players drafted under Hextall on the roster, including defenseman Ivan Provorov, who was drafted number 7, and Travis Konechny, who was drafted number 24. They were both drafted in the 2015 draft. He also drafted Nolan Patrick, of course, with the 2nd pick, getting the bloody pick of the century by going up like 10 spots to pick him. They also drafted goaltender Carter Hart, which is meant to be one of the top goalie prospects outside of the NHL. Drafted him 48th overall in 2016. And, other than that, of course, he also hired Dave Haxtell, who had previously been a coach of the NCAA from the University of North Dakota, which really hasn't worked out, to be honest. It really hasn't. I think the next person to go is Dave Haxtell from that if they continue to lose. But, it sucks because you always think of Philadelphia as the Broad Street Bullies. They're the tough guys that nobody really wants to play in the league. They're just not really up to it at the moment. I think the question is because they're bringing in lots of young talent, but they've also got the likes of Jakub Voracek, and they brought Van Riemsdyk in over the off-season to return to Philly. They've got Claude Giroux that was coming off a 100-point season last year. So I think the problem is that there's an identity crisis. I think. Are they trying to be a playoff contender, or are they trying to rebuild the roster? I think that's an issue for quite a few teams out there, though. It's not quite sure what to do, because of course you don't want to build a contending team and then drop to bottom in the standings, and then all of your prospects that you've traded to get players in their prime and high quality players has been all for naught, also known as the LA Kings at the moment. Or you have the situation where you give up all of your roster players and you play in the you play loads of rookies and draft loads of high players, aka the New York Rangers method, but you're looking to have several years where you're not going to be doing very well, So I think it's very interesting. They haven't named a replacement from what I'm aware of yet, so we'll keep an eye on that. I assume hopefully we'll have some sort of knowledge next episode as to what's happening there, but yeah, very interesting. So we move on to a trade that took place. This took place on the 26th of November also. 26th of November, very busy day. So, the Chicago Blackhawks decided to trade Nick Schmaltz to the Arizona Coyotes in exchange for Dylan Strome and Brendan Perlini. Yes, Brett Perlini's brother, who was part of the Arizona Coyotes organization, along with the Arizona Coyotes' 3rd overall pick in 2015, I want to say. 2014. No, that was Schmaltz. I don't know. So Strome and Pelini to Chicago, Schmaltz to Arizona. In terms of what I think about this trade, it's another example of the Blackhawks kind of taking advantage of the Coyotes. They've made several lopsided trades with this team in the last few years. Sure, Schmaltz is a good player. Whether he's going to be a top player for the Coyotes, I doubt it. He had 11 points in 23 games with the Blackhawks so far this season. He was the 20th overall pick in the 2014 draft. As at the time of this article being written, he had 91 points in 162 games. But Dylan Strome, he's getting the chance to actually go to a team that knows how to use young players. And Brendan Pelini, he's a nice little addition that could notch you like 20 goals if he plays well enough, which I think Chicago, especially with their salary cap problems, will very much be wanting. The only issue is they get 2 forwards for a defenseman. Their defensive core isn't looking very good at the moment. Max, what do you think?
I think it's a good trade for both sides, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like Chicago get the kind of requirements that they need from younger guys, because my God, they just said a couple of years ago, right, we'll get the band back together and see if we can win a cup, and it's gone south.
Yeah, it didn't work so well, did it?
Yeah. Asian players, and see if we can do it again for the boys, and we turn out like LA this year. So yeah, but going through Twitter, I do follow Pelini on Twitter. He's very excited to be going to Chicago. I believe it was his childhood.
Yes, I was going to mention that now that you brought it up. Yeah.
He's very excited to be going there. I can't see it being like a game-changing trade.
I agree.
Both teams thought something that they wanted. They got rid of some stuff. It's probably not the trade that you're going to be talking about at the end of the season. Going, oh my God, do you remember?
Of course not.
No, but it's a good move for the players that are involved, and they seem to be excited by it, and it's kind of like none like I wasn't expecting this kind of thing. They seem to be very happy with the way that it's gone about.
Yeah. What about you, Chris? What do you think, bud?
I mean, they need it. I mean, Chicago are 3.5 games back off a wild card spot already.
Okay.
So they need some. I mean, and Minnesota and Dallas in those spots at the minute have got games in hand on them as well.
Well, there you go.
I mean, St. Louis are only 1 game behind Chicago, but they've got 3 games in hand.
St. Louis have had a rough old season this year. Jeez.
They have. I mean, in terms of Arizona, if there's anything that can strengthen them, it is obviously a bonus. They are only 2 games back off a wild card spot, and they've only got the 1 game in hand, so they're not too far off that cusp as well.
Yeah.
So again, I think similar to as we were saying with Manchester and Milton Keynes in the Elite League, just those few extra pieces that will just tip them, and get those few extra victories and those extra 2 points, and you could be looking at sneaking into one of those wild card spots at the end of the season.
I think for the players involved, I think the trade works out quite nicely in the sense that Strome, he was a very high draft pick. There was lots of talk as to whether he was a bust and everything like that. He finally gets to go to a team. No, I mean, to be fair to Arizona, like, they're not good at developing young prospects. Like, they've been doing it for so many years now, and it just hasn't worked out for the large majority of cases. So Chicago, I mean, you see with Alex DeBrincat, for example, like, they're good at developing young players. I mean, they brought in Panarin from the KHL, and he's scorched out before being traded, obviously. So I think it works out for Strome. He gets the chance, hopefully, to have more consistent playing time in the NHL as well. He was very much bouncing between AHL and NHL when he was in Arizona. Also, Brendan Pelini, he's a nice addition like I said, he can add 20 goals or so on a season, add some secondary scoring to your lineup. He's nothing to write home about in the NHL, I think is a fair statement to make, but he's a guy that can add an extra layer of scoring, and especially for a team that might be struggling to score, he's a good guy you can bring in. And, I mean, Arizona get another defenseman, I think works out quite nicely for him. They're wanting to, of course, stack as many defensemen as possible, because defense does win championships. The only thing, like I said at the beginning, I just don't understand Chicago getting rid of Schmaltz. The only thought I can have it was a salary cap move, because they don't have many solid defensemen in that group anymore. I mean, they've got Seabrook, they've got they brought in somebody to start the season. They're playing a lot of young kids on that back end. They're playing a lot of young kids or players past their prime on that back end. Their forward group is quite good. Taze has managed to pick up the pace again after an off year last year. Patrick Kane is being Patrick Kane like he always is. You've got players on that roster that are scoring goals for you, but they're not keeping enough out. And Corey Crawford's had concussion problems the last few seasons. He was out until the first 10 games of this season or so with concussion problems. So the issue for them is in the back end. And of course, they traded one of their better defensemen, you could argue, Nick Jolmerson, to the Arizona Coyotes a season or two ago. So I don't understand why they would want to trade another defenseman for more forwards unless it was a pure salary cap move. I don't know. Of course, I'm not in that boardroom, so I don't know what they're talking about. So let's move on to an interesting, very, very strange, unexpected piece of news, I think, this one. So this was announced on the 24th of November. So, you know, during the NHL season, during hockey seasons, players get fined and players get suspended, right? Some players, they might forget about the rules, they take things a little bit too far, and they're fined a certain amount of money for diving or embellishment or hooking, or they get suspended, like Tom Wilson every 5 minutes, or they do something else, or, you know, it's part of the hockey season. However, I think Brad Marchand last year during the playoffs has started something I'm not sure I really like. It's very strange. Of course, if you remember last season, Brad Marchand decided to lick Ryan Callahan and somebody else's face, which, ew. But also, it was revealed that the Vancouver Canucks and ex-Dallas Stars forward, Antoine Roussel, the French forward, was fined $5,000 for biting a player in the face. I think it was in the face, for biting a player anyway. So this took place during a game between the Vancouver Canucks and the San Jose Sharks. The victim of the event was Marc-Edouard Vlasic of the San Jose Sharks. And yeah, Antoine Roussel bit him, and he's been fined $5,000. I mean, that's probably
Luis Suarez's brother, isn't it?
It's the most expensive bite I think he's ever taken in his entire career, let's be honest. But I mean, I completely understand why they fined him for doing that. Like, don't bite people. Come on. Just like, don't lick players, don't bite players, don't touch players inappropriately, and we can all get on fine, you know? Just play the damn game, and life's great. But $5,000 for biting someone? Jesus Christ, that's a lot of money. Like, to Antoine Roussel, that's like a fancy dinner. To us, that's a shit ton of money. What do you guys think?
I just don't see the point in doing it. Why would you?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
Exactly. It's like, why bite a player? Can you imagine getting so annoyed?
Like,
I mean,
surely
Max,
you
you're
punch
the
them,
most
don't
active
bite them.
hockey player out of all of us. Can you imagine getting so annoyed at a player that you go over and bite him?
Usually I eat before the game, so I'm usually good on that. So
exactly. It's like, it's such an easy thing to know. Don't lick players. Don't bite players. I feel like they should have that up in like the Boston and the Vancouver locker rooms now as they leave to go and play. Just like, don't lick, don't bite, get on just fine. So that was an interesting bit of news. Just thought you might want to hear about it. It's a bit weird. So another piece of news that came up recently. Chris was actually the one that alerted me to this fact. So it turns out that there might be, of course, the NHL every year, they like to try out new stuff, whether it be rules or equipment sizes or things like that. They like to experiment with stuff to see if it helps improve or whether it hinders the game. So an idea potentially for, I think it's next season, they're thinking about putting play clocks in the boards. Chris, did you find the article or the tweet or anything that you found for this, Chris?
I haven't looked again, but I can remember it.
Yeah, go for
so
it.
basically, they've tried it a couple of times, and in leagues around the world, and basically this is so that the players when they're setting up a power play in the dying moments and all the rest of it, can see the game clock, because normally, the netminder's got to shout it to him from the other end of the ice because he can look up into the jumbotron and all the rest of it. So the idea is that the time remaining is, like, I don't know, in diagonal corners of the ice, one at each end, so the players on the ice can see how long's left.
So
this is only the time. This isn't like time remaining on penalties and all that.
Yeah. So
it's just the game clock.
So I don't quite know what I think about this, to be honest. Of course,
it's great until Chara takes a slap shot from the blue line and smashes it.
Or Fanuff takes a slap shot against the same pane of glass twice. And they have to change that twice. So from a player's perspective, of course, I don't know exactly a player's perspective. I've never played. From an NHL player's perspective, I can imagine them thinking this might be quite a useful thing. However, the other half of me saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, you've got the jumbotron right above you. You've got the goaltender, like you said, to be able to shout how long you've got left. Like, you're sitting on the bench for a large majority of the game where you're looking at how long you've got left on the clock anyway. So I don't know if it... Like, I can understand why they might want to introduce it, but I can also understand why they wouldn't, Max, you seem like you want to say something about this.
Max, you play.
What? It depends on the information that's going to be on there. If it's going to be a mini score clock, so it's going to have, if it's going to have this, it's going to have time, score, or penalties. The most recent penalties, I don't think it'll be big enough to house, say, like a 5-on-3 or something like that. Most recent penalty, or nearest running out, and potentially the period, because the players need to know what bloody period it is, apparently.
Well, some of them do. Have you seen some of the teams play recently?
Like, it just kind of, I don't know, it just seems a bit odd. They've had, and like you alluded to, if someone takes a massive snapshot, they've had video advertising on the side of the rinks.
Yes.
During the play, they like on football, when they move, like, the McDonald's ad comes up and this and the during play. They don't do it during play. They do it during breaks. Somebody takes a check into the boards, it's buggered. If someone takes a shot, it's gone. They've got some behind the goal. Like, just how long are we going to be until the NHL looks like the Sheffield ice rink, where it's too busy and you can't see the puck or what players are playing, or they've got too much.
Right though, like, the Sheffield rink is so ugly. The
Sheffield rink. I hate all rinks where, like, the entire face-off dot is just the entire face-off circle is an advert.
Yeah.
I really hate that.
Yeah.
But I mean, Max, you play now. To me, I mean, for penalties, you've got the netminder who slaps his stick on the ice a lot. For time running out and stuff, you've got the players on the bench and the coaches that are telling 15 and 10 and count. Surely when you're on the ice, you're concentrating so much on the play, you're not going to stop, turn to the board, and go, "Oh, I've got 2 minutes 42 left. Back to the action. Oh, hang on, what in the 2 seconds I've been watching that, the puck's down the other end."
Well, yeah, and you've got players that bang on the boards, and if the goalie hasn't picked it up, there's just, plus players know how long it takes if they're dawdling or if they're taking too long, or they're aware of their shift times. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And then if it's like a minute, less than a minute to go, and they've got a power play and they've pulled the goalie and they're down by 1 goal, and all these sort of scenarios, the coach draws it up and says, "Right, you've got this amount of time." Everyone looks up at the board and goes, "Oh yeah, we've got this amount of time."
It's just not needed.
So just to add a bit of extra context, I believe I'm reading a Reddit post that's on one of these hockey forums on Reddit, and I believe that they've quoted Elliot Friedman, who's of course one of a big hockey insider, and it was during a game it was an exhibition game between Vancouver and Toronto, I believe. Apparently, the word is that the clock worked very well and it received positive reviews from coaches, players, and officials. So I guess The officials is kind of one that I didn't realise or thought maybe overlooked how much it might affect. Because, of course, they don't really get the chance to look up to the Jumbotron unless players stopped to see how long is left. But then again, do they really need to? They just need to cover what's going on at that moment in time. And then usually there's a horn or a buzzer to sound an end of a period or something anyway. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to go into effect. Because also it clashes with advertising space and things like that. And of course,
I was about to say the exact same. How, if you just have the time on there and it's tiny, okay. But whatever space you give over to this clock, you're losing in advertising.
Yeah, which of course they have the advertising all around the boards on
Yeah.
rinks. So
that's, yeah. I mean, I don't think it's going to come in because I just can't see. Okay, I suppose, yeah, but I mean, if it was in an exhibition game, obviously it's a little bit slower, isn't it? They're not going to take time out in game 7, are they, to just check that other sides? They're going to be on it all the time.
Yeah, and then you've got the problem that like 2 clocks show one time and 2 clocks show another, which would really throw people off. Which of course they'd have to get sorted as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'd just leave it, to be honest.
Yeah, I think like we said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Okay, so penultimate stuff regarding the NHL. We kind of mentioned the last one a little bit before we started.
Yeah, Nylander's signs. Moving on.
Oi, no, I've got a whole bit for that. Shut up, Chris.
Oh God.
So, Gritty, you know, everyone's favourite child scarer. He's been in the news again over the last few weeks. Just some interesting stuff. I thought I'd update you. I think we need Gritty's corner on this place now. So he applied to be the Time Magazine's Person of the Year, which I thought was quite interesting. I mean, the likes of Hitler have been on that before, so I mean, he's not really out of his own realm, to be honest. And the other interesting piece of information was I saw a load of videos on Twitter about a week ago or so, which were very interesting, and it was of this woman in Philadelphia at a wedding, and Gritty turned up to this really big wedding that took place and was signing autographs and taking photos with the guests and stuff like that, which I thought was quite cool. I mean,
didn't her groom have Gritty tattooed on his leg or something?
Yeah, something like that, I think. Yeah.
It was just.
I've got to give the Philadelphia Flyers and the people who designed Gritty credit, right? Everyone was horrified when they first saw him, right? Like, yeah, especially me. I was absolutely horrified from that.
He looks like Animal from the Muppets on drugs.
Exactly. Then he became a meme. He's kind of transcended meme status. Like, I feel like he's a breath of fresh air for the NHL. Like, because we're so used to like we got the puck deep and we took the shot on the goal, and it's like all the sort of robotic responses from robotic players that have been taught how to be media savvy since they could put skates on. And then you get like somebody like Gritty that they're playing a game against the Sharks. He goes to like SeaWorld and rips off all the sharks from the shop and starts stamping
from the shelves.
It's funny. Like I give Gritty credit. He's a monstrosity. He's an ugly thing, but he's funny. And at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, it's the personality that counts. So if there's anything to take from this podcast, it's that.
He's got to that point that even BBC News wrote an article about how he's becoming an internet sensation
in America. Not the NHL, the best league in the world, an ice hockey league in America.
Yeah, but don't forget, this is the same organisation that put somebody on that thought the cameramen were on the ice.
Still makes me die every time we bring that up.
I know.
Claire Balding, never change, please. Never
to be
change.
To be fair, it wasn't actually Claire Balding.
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was. No, that she followed up on it. The person who first.
Other person followed up on it. Go watch the clip.
Did she? Oh, I can't remember.
I hope I'm not wrong now.
No, I thought it was that speed skater that brought it up first, and Claire just agreed.
All right, maybe.
But anyway,
we're gonna have to check the footage.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's Gritty getting up to his usual antics. There was also one a couple of weeks ago where he It was like between periods at a Flyers game or something.
Did
and all
you
the
wrestle a kid or something?
Yeah, the Mike players were all playing. One of them wanted to try and drop the gloves and fight Gritty, so he picked him up, chucked him in the penalty box, and just carried on. See, like, that stuff's fun. Like, it's so unlike the robotic NHL we have nowadays, and the proper responses, and we played well, like Arsene Wenger, you know? Like, it's good. It's fun to see something fun and exciting and different. I mean, that's why people like PK Subban so much. He was one of those kind of guys as well.
That's the thing that my club should be doing.
Have you brought it up?
Okay, no, it was Claire Boulding.
Hey, I knew it. Yes. Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, we've got some very breaking news here on the Icing on the Skate podcast.
Just in case you've been living in a cave for the last 6 months, Brexit.
Yes. The UK have a new Brexit secretary. He's been brought in because, as Chris said, he's used to doing stuff at the last minute. It's like a college student that had this big essay to do and had months and months to get it done.
Are you speaking from experience here?
But then decided at the last moment, oh, I should probably get that done. Stayed up right till the early hours of the morning drinking Monster and Red Bull to get him through it. You can
tell here, Max, that he's speaking from experience, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I always got my work done early, lads. Come on, look at me.
That was me.
The podcast I get done late, but everything else I'm on time. So, ladies and gentlemen, some really big news. We're the first people to break it here on the internet. William Nylander of the Toronto Maple Leafs. He had lots of controversy being a restricted free agent as to whether he would sign. The preseason came, he didn't sign. The regular season came, he didn't sign. The deadline day came, was December 1st at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, so 10 p.m. for us. Ladies and gentlemen, William Nylander, after all that time, all that suspense, all that tension, did exactly what everyone expected him to do, and he re-signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Wasn't it like
finally,
I
don't
time
have to hear that person's name in any other NHL broadcasts for the next few weeks. I've had enough of every single NHL network, every single Sid and Ted or whatever his name is. Just every single one just like, let's talk about William Nylander. What's the latest update? He took a shit this morning. Like, I don't care. I don't care about William Nylander anymore. I'm sure he's a lovely human being. I'm sure he's a great family man that really respects the game. He's got his money. He's getting paid $10 million this season with an average annual value of $6.9 million, I think, for the rest of the contract. I don't care. Thank you for ending this. Like, great. He's with Toronto. Toronto's going to be a deadly team. He's going to have a great season. Congratulations, Toronto. You kept him. Kyle Dubas, a young GM, you kept him. Good job. Now I don't care. If I hear his name again, I'm done.
Does he get traded?
So I believe he has a no movement clause for the last year or two of his contract. Does he get traded this season? No, I doubt it.
I think they should have signed him without a trade, so they could move him. Like
it's a 6-year contract. 7 years?
6 years. Yeah.
Yeah, 6 years.
You send that to a team that needs it, and you get. Like you could ask for the world. Like you could get a lot back for that. For a team that's going to be very, very good this year. Like I think they've missed a trick in the fact that they didn't. I don't think they left themselves the option open to move him.
I think they wanted to sign him all the way along. Like they want to keep him, Marner, Matthews, Tavares together. Like that's going to be the glue to their team. It's kind of like the Crosby, Malkin, Kessel, and someone else from Pittsburgh. You know.
It's up to the finals of the playoffs at least.
If they get some help on the defense, they are going to be a legitimate threat. You know, I mean they're playing pretty well already. So, I hope I don't hear William Nylander's name for like 2 years now. Like fair play to the guy. He was well within his right to hold out for this long. Like fair play to him. He still didn't get the money that he asked for, but fair play to him. Of course, his dad and his uncle, I believe, were former NHL players. So, Yeah. Please don't let me hear William Nylander's name for the next 2 seasons. I will have gotten over it by then. I'll be ready, you know. But for now,
just watch him score like a Game 7 winner, and everyone goes on about it for years.
Yeah, fair play. I mean, yeah, by playoffs, I don't care. He's been on the team for like 5 months, so that's great.
It's true.
It's just every fucking day, man. So we move off from the NHL and we move on to Kirk's Corner. Da 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 da. So, Chris, how's Liam Kirk doing?
He's doing well.
Yeah, he is, isn't he?
Since we were last doing this podcast, he's increased his production. He had a couple of assists, some goals as well.
Hey.
28 games have been played now in that season, and he's doing pretty well. 7 goals, 7 assists for 14 points, so a point every 2 games, which, considering it's his first season over there in North America, very steady. I think he'll... if he can keep that going for the rest of the season, and there's no reason why he can't, he can continue to build on that.
Yep, a point every other game so far.
Yeah, considering he's not even halfway through his first season and he's averaging a point every other game, it's really quite impressive.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I mean, you've got to bear in mind that he's been in Sheffield for the last however many years. He's been part of the UK hockey system for however many years. The first year he's moved over, he's gone from playing against men to playing against kids again. So he's moved over to Canada. There's a time difference there. You're having to adjust. Because let's not forget, like, jet lag and stuff, of course it wears off after a while. But we're expecting him to be at the top of his game every day, even though he's moved over 5 hours behind and he's having to readjust to a completely different lifestyle, you know?
What you've got to note, though, is you said, he was playing against men and he's gone back to playing against kids. Whilst that's true, these are players who, A, some of them could skate before they could walk, and B, have grown up with an entirely different style of hockey that they've been playing their whole lives, and he's got to adapt to.
And that many of them will find themselves in the NHL. Like, he's playing against some of the best kids in the entire world. So, to go, I mean, he was scorching it last week, wasn't he? He scored like 7 goals in 3 games or something, didn't he? 5 goals in 3 games or something like that, which was awesome.
It was more assists, but it was he did do really well, and as Kalesborough says, he's doing the EIHL proud. He's doing the whole of the UK proud.
Definitely.
I think that he could be followed over there by Kieran Brown.
I thought so too. How old is Kieran Brown?
Kieran Brown is still a youngster. I think he's only 17, but I could be wrong. He turns 18
this season, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So he can take the same route as Kirk, for example. Because junior eligibility ends at 20. So
yeah. So I reckon he will find his way over there.
Yeah, whether he's drafted or not, I'm not sure. But yeah, he could definitely find himself over on there and
he's
only
undrafted
player, you know.
He's only 17. He was born in 2001.
Right. Okay. Awesome. So that's Kirk's Corner. He's doing great, as we thought he would. He obviously got off to a bit of a rough start. Well, he started off well, then had a very rough patch, and now he's finding his game again, which is good. Now, Tomo's DEL adventure.
Yeah.
So Tomo's been busy, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's slowed down a little bit, must be honest. When he first went over there, it started off well, 3-0-0. 2 of those were overtime wins, but still 3-0-0. His last 4 games, though, he's had just the 1 win, although that was a shutout win, and 3 losses. So in total, since he's gone over there, he is 4-3-0. Okay,
so he's got an over 500 record. Of course, he has taken on the team that was sitting at the bottom of the DEL standings.
Yes.
So
they are still at the bottom of the DEL standings.
By how many points?
Just the 2 points from the bottom. So, but they are 16 points from the playoffs.
Okay. I mean, I think they're just hoping to have a good end to the season. Maybe the playoffs is a stretch, but as long as they don't finish last, I think they'll be happy, let's be honest. So, yeah, awesome. What do you think about this whole stuff, Max?
I don't know. It's good. It's good for Tomo. He goes and finds himself a job. he's not back in Coventry, which I thought was a bit of a shock. But hey, we'll see what happens in the off season, because he likes to bounce between Sheffield and Coventry quite a lot in his history. He's in the DEL2, isn't he?
No, he's in the DEL.
DEL.
He's in the DEL.
The top league, my son. The top league.
Right. I do have to ask a question. I don't know a lot about the DEL. I don't know if any of you do.
I didn't until he.
I kind of known a bit about it. Of course, the teams in the Champions Hockey League and stuff, like the Red Bull teams, and with any of the research that I do for any Whatever Happened To videos and stuff. But yeah, other than that, not really a huge amount.
The question I was going to ask is, do they have a promotion demotion?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Let me just.
So, but I'm not sure. We'll get Chris on that.
I think it might be almost like a money thing, like the Elite League is.
Okay.
Just because I was looking, I've got my Elite League prospect.
Hey.
I've been looking at a former coach in the league that has moved over to a German team in the DEL2, and that is the one, Mr. Corey Nielsen.
Of course, yes. Oh, I forgot about him. How's he doing?
Yeah, he seems to be doing pretty well. So he took over a team last year that had in the 52 games played in the regular season in DEL2. They had 19 wins, 21 losses, 3 overtime wins, and 9 overtime losses.
Okay.
6th in the league. Oh, no, sorry, 11th in the league, and was saved in play out, whatever that may mean. I'm guessing they had like a there's something that I need to kind of look at and see.
Yeah. So the Del 2, they do have like a promotion relegation type thing. So the bottom 4 teams kind of go into a playoffs where if you don't come bottom, you don't go down type thing.
There we go.
Is that with so that's the DL and DL2? Or the DL2 in the league below them?
Yeah, well, in the Del 2, they do have a promotion. It says here, but there doesn't seem to be any kind of relegation out of the DEL, which does surprise me.
You know what?
Well,
we'll look that up and
update
next week.
Not according to Flash scores, anyway. But Corey's DEL2 team are doing all right, actually. So far, they're in 4th at the moment.
Nice, fair play.
But they're only 1 point off second. So
good job to Corey Nielsen. Fair play to him. I completely forgot about adding him on this whole list.
Well, that's because he wasn't a Brit, was he?
Yeah, I guess so.
He's got dual nationality.
Yeah, that's a good point. Oh.
He is technically a citizen. He took the citizenship test, and I've been lucky enough to be in his presence many a time. He wants to keep. I'm going to try and keep as up to date with him as possible.
Yeah, do it. Yeah.
His team, which are called. I'm going to learn the pronunciation before I come back and say it.
Good idea. Good
They're
idea.
Like Lawsit's a Fuchs or something like that.
Like with this whole Kirk's Corner and looking at the DL and now Corey Nielsen in the DL too, like it gives us a chance to look at other leagues around the world as well, and then if you guys that are watching then start to look at them, you might pique your interest in a league that you might not necessarily know too much about. You get to know about some of the teams, you keep up to date with some of the scores. It just sort of broadens your hockey knowledge. Like there's a lot of fans out there that just follow one league, and I would say that those people are really missing out on some other really good hockey. Sure, it might not be the best in the world, but it's some really good hockey. Like, for example, a lot of NHL fans don't follow any other league. A lot of Elite League fans will follow the NHL and the Elite League and nothing else, you know? So...
Yeah.
NHL,
okay, exactly. So just on that kind of Dell promotion relegation thing.
Yeah.
So the Dell has to have at least 14 teams in it.
Okay.
And each team has to fulfill the basic requirements to stay in the league.
Okay.
So you have to have a particular size stadium, financial stuff, all the rest of it, that sort of stuff.
Basically have enough money.
You have to have a development program for young players. You have to purchase a license, which is €800,000 every year. And the DEL can only admit one second Bundesliga team per season to the league, unless the league strength falls below 14, when two can come in.
Okay.
You can't get relegated from the top league unless you lose your status through non-compliance with the relegation systems.
So, like, if you run out of money or your stuff's not up to scratch, then you'll be either relegated or removed, and then a team.
In a sense, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
The only downside is if the DEL2 side is able to join, but their stadium isn't big enough, but they've got a big enough following, then they're never going to make it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I have that problem in women's football at the moment, because the top two leagues have criteria that anybody from the bottom two leagues can't really meet, because you have to get a gate of 1,000 and nobody ever does. So you can't progress anywhere. It's a little bit broken.
Yeah. So we've got a few other pieces of news. We're going to skip over fantasy stuff today because it's been a little while. Essentially, this is how it went. Chris won again. I won. And I can't remember how Max did. So there you
go. Max won as well, I think.
We all won. Yeah. Winning is great.
Don't know. And I think unfortunately Habs missed out on about 15 odd points, which would have made it a bit tighter. But the guy that lost.
Yeah, I had that.
The guy that lost it for him was Martin Jones, the San Jose Sharks. He absolutely shit the bed, and I think he lost him about 10 to 15 points.
Oh, that's rough. Just a few small bits of info regarding the NHL and stuff. These were just recent stuff that happened today. Josh Lavo of the Maple Leafs has been traded to the Vancouver Canucks in exchange for Michael Carcone. Josh Lavo, however you want to call him. He's essentially the victim of Nylander coming back. They needed a roster spot for him. Lavo has had some struggles recently with finding his spot on the roster, so they've moved him to Vancouver. I think that could be a very good move for him. Don't really know who the guy is coming back, but they're going to probably plug him in the AHL anyway. I mean, you're changing Lavo for Nylander, so I think everyone's a winner in this scenario, except for Michael Carcone, maybe. And something that, Max, you liked something on Facebook, I think, which showed me this, which I thought was quite a good one. The Hershey Bears with their teddy bear toss. Yeah, I thought it would be quite a nice one to bring up. So, for those of you who only follow the NHL, I doubt there's many of you at this time in the day, but you know what teddy bear toss, a team scores, or in the Panthers' case, they don't, and they chuck them.
Yeah, I was going to that really successful Panthers one.
So usually it's like if a goal is scored, some teams do it at in an intermission. The Hershey Bears decided to do it when a goal was scored, and they managed to, in their game yesterday, break the record of the most stuffed animals thrown on the ice during a teddy bear toss, with a grand total of 34,798. That's a lot of stuffing. That's crazy. I would really like to know.
Can you imagine?
Okay. Wow, this is actually pretty crazy. The previous record was was 28,815, which was set by the Calgary Hitmen 3 years ago. And the Calgary Hitmen, of course, are a junior team. So they bested that by about, 6,000? That's pretty cool. And the Hershey Bears' previous high mark was 25,000, which was last year. So they bested that by 9,000, sorry. 9,000 extra. So I thought that was awesome. I thought that was good to note. All of them going to a good cause, of course. I believe it was Riley Barber that scored the goal.
It's a really good goal, actually. I think nice. I believe they were full play. And, it was a good goal. Well worked.
Nice. And the penultimate bit of news, I thought this would be interesting to know. What's his name? Arno Del Curto, the head coach of HC Davos, announced that he had left the team after 22 years behind the bench of HC Davos. The now ex-head coach was 62 years old. He resigned as the head coach of the Swiss club HC Davos, one of the oldest hockey clubs in Switzerland. He was in his 23rd season. So Del Curto led Davos to 6 championships in 2002, 05, 07, 09, 11 and 15. And he won the Spengler Cup with HC Davos, which of course is Davos, and they usually bring in a KHL team and Team Canada, which is all the players that aren't playing in the NHL essentially. They won the Spengler Cup in 2000, 01, 04, 06 and 11. And they had a top 4 finish in they had a top 4 finish in a top IIHF sanctioned European club competition twice, 2006 in the European Champions Cup and 2016 in the Champions Hockey League. So a lot of success there, of course. And his resignation or him leaving came after a 9-2 loss for HC Davos in one of their Swiss games. So that sucks. But yeah, thought that would be interesting to know. And the last piece of news, which Chris, I believe, initially enlightened me on, is the Federal Hockey League have decided to introduce a potential rule change which brings in shootouts before the game starts. So they do a pre-game shootout so that if the game does eventually go to a shootout, it's already decided who wins before they actually have to do a shootout at the end.
Yeah, because fans really like a shootout, this is their words, and they don't get to see them often enough. So they're going to have one at the start. So, I don't know, okay, so if I'm playing Hayden's team, let's just say, because that's going to make it easy. So if I win the shootout, and then it's tied at the end of overtime, I win. Which means that...
It's shit, really, isn't it?
Which means that if it goes to overtime, then I can just...
Yeah, you tank it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do the NHL 19 puck rag behind the back of the net and dump it. Right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that was interesting.
It was a funny story.
Yeah, it was an interesting story. I think it's a bit shit. I hope no other leagues decide to take that on, and I don't think they will. So yeah, that's essentially everything for today's stream. Hour and 40 minutes, not too bad to cram all that stuff in. Of course, we moved on from sort of the normal like debate topic, and we didn't go into much detail about fantasy and everything. That will come back next week. It's just because we had a huge amount of stuff. I didn't want to leave out quite a lot of the stuff that we did eventually talk about because it was a week or a week and a half ago. Because especially with like players moving in the Elite League and everything like that, I think it's quite important to update you guys. Because, like we said, teams aren't really that good at publicising quite a lot of this stuff. They don't make it very well known. So if we can help to kind of inform you guys on what's happening in the league, whether it be the team that you follow or a team that you don't know much about, but you're curious as to the goings-on around the league, then that's why we do it. So, reminder that Belfast and Dundee are on Free Sports on Wednesday at 7:30. I'm definitely going to be watching. If you have the chance to watch it, you probably should sit down and take a watch. One of the best teams against a team on a winning streak. So, yeah, it's going to be a great matchup. I think we'll forego questions today because we're overrunning a tad. So, I just want to say a big thank you to these two people here for supporting me on Patreon. If you guys would like shout-outs at the end of future videos, you can go over to Patreon.com/OddmanRush is the actual thing. There's $1 tiers, $5 tiers. I believe there's a $1 tier, $5 tier,
it's
$10 tier, and $20
10 and 20.
So
yeah.
It is quite literally like a give whatever you feel like giving. Of course, you don't have to. It's very much up to you guys. But if you want access to exclusive content and exclusive live streams in the future, if we get enough people, or shout outs at the end of future videos, hopefully you guys have noticed that I've started doing that for some of the more recent videos, then do feel free to head over there. I can put a link in the chat if anybody wants it, just let me know. But yeah, I'm going to end the stream here. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Thank you to Chris and Max for joining me today. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.